Today we're talking about spousal sponsorship process and everything that you need to know if you are planning to apply for spousal sponsorship. My name is Olena Weber. I'm regulated Canadian immigration consultant, and today with me I have Cory Weber. He's also an RCIC.
Yes.
Hi, Cory.
Hello.
Um, all right, so let's talk about the basics of spousal sponsorship and how does this whole process work and what people should be aware about if they're planning to apply for sponsorship. So I think the first step when you're applying for spousal sponsorship would be basically to understand, are you applying as a common law couple or as a married couple? And a lot of people are still kind of confused what common law is and
Yeah.
whether they should get married for a spousal sponsorship process. So can you explain a bit about that?
Yeah. Obviously, marriage is marriage. If you're married, you have a marriage certificate. You would know that, hopefully, and you would know, that's your reality. The question, yeah, often comes with spousal sponsorship is common law and what exactly that is, and how do I know if I'm common law, and etc. So the rule is in Canada that if you are in a romantic, relationship with your partner and you're cohabitating together, and you do so for 12 consecutive months, then you are now common law. A lot of people don't even think about this. They just like, hey, we live together and we're dating and we're, in a relationship, and they don't realize that they eventually are going to become common law after 12 months. And you have to think of that. You know, just keep it in the back of your mind that you might be common law and you don't even know it. If you're in a relationship with someone and you've lived together for 12 months, under the eyes of Canadian government, you are common law. So that is the first step to understanding what common law is. So if you are in that position, if you have lived together for 12 months or more in a romantic relationship with your partner, then you can apply for spousal sponsorship based on that common law relationship. And under the eyes of the government, they view the common law relationship equal to basically being married, right? They don't really there's no differences under the eyes of the government, other than the fact that a marriage certificate is involved with a marriage. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's the first step: understanding if you are in a common law relationship, and if so, then yes, you can apply for sponsorship.
And then, of course, like you said, that if you're married, you're married. And in this video, we're specifically talking about spousal sponsorship. So just so nobody gets confused, spousal sponsorship is essentially if you are in common law relationship or you're married to a Canadian citizen or a
Yes.
permanent resident of Canada. So if that's the case, then your partner, Canadian citizen or permanent resident of Canada, can sponsor you, right?
Yes,
So again,
exactly.
as Cory explained, either as a common law or as a married in marriage relationship. So another question we get a lot is that you of course explained that as a common law you need to live together for 12 months and only then you can apply for this spousal sponsorship process.
Yeah.
But as a married couple, like, is there any period of time that you need to live together or be married before you apply for spousal sponsorship?
So the quick answer, I guess, is no. You don't have to. As a married couple, it's oftentimes that somebody who might live in Canada and be a permanent resident or a Canadian citizen will marry someone outside of Canada who doesn't have any, ties to Canada whatsoever. In these cases, you can still sponsor them, right? And that's perfectly fine, and it's a very common thing to see. Someone goes back home, finds the love of their life, gets married, and then they want to bring that spouse to Canada. So in this case, yes, absolutely, you can do that. That is not a problem. In the common law scenario, yes, most of the time the common law couples are living in Canada together, and one of them would be a permanent resident or Canadian citizen. And in most cases, in that case, you're doing like an in Canada sponsorship. But there are lots of opportunities for people to do outland applications as well. So that the scenario I just mentioned, yeah, absolutely, you can have never been in Canada, you've never visited, and still be sponsored to Canada as a spouse of a permanent resident or Canadian citizen. So yes, absolutely, that's fine for sure.
So what would be the main differences? You mentioned like the two main application types,
Hmm.
which would be like inland and outland, right?
Yeah.
So what would be the main differences between those two?
So that's what people like. It's a big deciding factor in your relationship, because some people have the opportunity to one or the other. Like you can either do an inland or you can do an outland, or the deciding factor is, like, for example, if your spouse is outside of Canada right now, you got married to them. Um, Most likely you are going to do an outland application as they live outside of Canada. So an outland application, in terms of like documents, and if we talk about like what's the difference between an outland or an inland application, it comes down to the documents you need to provide and the information and the proof of these relationships that you need to provide. So um, in the case, like if we want to break it down into the differences, outland applications tend to be a little bit easier to do. It's a little bit less document heavy, just in that with an inland application, the assumption is obviously that you live with your partner inland in Canada, and then you need to provide those documents that prove that you live together. So shared address, and you have a shared history and a shared, all of the stuff that's shared. Um, where the government understands with an outland application that you don't live together, and therefore the document package is a bit different. They don't need documents proving you live together. It's a bit different. So they do need documents proving that you're in contact with each other, et cetera, et cetera. But it actually becomes a bit easier for the outland application in terms of documents. Yeah, so that's kind of the main difference. That outland, you don't have to prove that you're living together. Inland, you do have to prove that you're living together. I mean,
Yeah,
that's the
Outland,
summary of it.
like for even like our processing, like in terms of our processing, like we like more Outland applications
Yeah.
just because for us it's just more straightforward, like putting the application together. But of
Yes.
course, if you are inland in a position to apply inland, that's absolutely fine. It's just
Yeah.
it means it requires a bit more work to put the application package together.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes,
The
and what
one
would be the processing time difference between those two?
Yeah, so that was kind of another point. So, processing times they always are changing, obviously. With IRCC, the processing times constantly going up, down, changing inland, outland. So it needs to be a factor to that you look into, when you're thinking about if you have the opportunity, to do both, an inland versus an outland. That should be one of the factors you use to decide whether one is right for you or the other, inland or outland. Check the processing time. So historically generally speaking, outland applications, had a longer processing time. Of course, IRCC changes these rules and processing times based on their supply, how many applications they're getting. So at any given moment, you can go log in, check the Canada website, and see what the processing times are, and let it be a deciding factor for your application. Maybe one makes much more sense at the time when you're ready to apply. Depends on when you're applying, right? So
Yeah.
before you make the decision, check processing times for sure.
Yeah, for sure. That's one of the biggest factors for sure we consider as well when deciding. And so, just to kind of sum it up, that the person who is in common law relationship or married to a Canadian citizen or permanent resident, they would have, this opportunity to apply for permanent residency through spousal sponsorship. They would need to, as a next step, they would need to kind of pick whether they're going with an inland application, meaning that they live in Canada and they would
Yeah.
everything would be kind of processed within Canada, or with an outland application, meaning that they
Yes.
file as a resident of overseas country and it would be processed inside Canada, but also outside Canada as well.
Yeah.
So after that, like decision is made and the person is ready to start the process, they would need to obviously gather the documents and put the application package together. So tell me a little bit about like how that looks like, putting the whole spousal sponsorship application package together. Like how long does it
Yeah.
take realistically for the person to do that?
Sure. Yeah. So everybody's different, obviously, and like some people are very motivated and they want to get things done, and that's good. But we have to remember with the spousal sponsorship application, whether or not inland or outland, it is a large application. It is a document heavy application. It's one of the most, fulsome applications that you can put together. And so you're not going to do it in a weekend, like you're not going to be able, it's not like a work permit application. You can just bang it out in a week or an afternoon or a weekend. It's just not going to happen. So whether or not you're working inland or outland, the goal is to prioritize the things that take the longest to get and start working on those things. For example, police certificates and the things that might take some time to get. Whether it's inland or outland, you should work on those things. And with the application, like I said, it's a large document heavy application. You should take it in small bites. That's how I like to say it. Take it and use like the checklists correctly, go through everything to make sure you're not missing any like required documents. The checklist is like really your best friend in sponsorship, to understand like what's required, what's not. And to understand that, like, to keep yourself organized basically, because it is such a large application. You need to stay organized, and you need to stay on top of things, right? And where you have your documents and how your information is being gathered. So it's an intense process. Most people, I would say, if you're super motivated, you could probably get the application, put it together, and if you're motivated, within a month, I would think it would take. We've had clients out there who are less motivated maybe, and which can take upwards of 6 months, right? And that's
We don't
fine.
like that though.
No, we don't like that. We prefer getting it done in a month, but everybody's different. And for some people, they're not motivated. Maybe they just got married, outland applicant, and they're fine waiting, to be together. And some people are very motivated. We want an outland application. I want to be with my wife as fast as possible. So then they're more, closer to that 1 month, which we like. Yeah. Again, the longer you take to put the application together, the longer you wait for your permanent residence, right? So the faster you can kind of make things happen is the
Yeah,
better way. Yeah.
makes sense. All right, I think this gives a really good idea and kind of overview of the process and like what to expect and how the process kind of looks like. If you guys have any questions, you can always comment and you can always reach out to us. All the information is in the description of the video. And yeah, thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you.